What if there was a dead man on a beach, and nobody, or not a single person in any country on Earth, could tell you who he was, what killed him, or why he carried a scrap of paper that said, "It is finished"? What if every clue left behind only deepened the mystery, and every person who might have provided answers either lied, vanished, or took what they knew to the grave? On the morning of the 1st of December 1948, two young jockeys exercising their horses along the shoreline at Somerton Park Beach, a suburb just south of Adelaide in South Australia, came upon the body of a man lying in the sand with his back propped against the concrete seawall. His legs were extended neatly in front of him. His ankles were crossed. His head was tilted slightly to one side. An unlit cigarette rested on his collar, unburned, as though it had been placed there or had simply slipped from a mouth that had stopped drawing breath. To the casual observer, he might have been sleeping. He was not. When police arrived, they found a man somewhere between 40 and 45 years of age, approximately 5 feet 11 inches tall, with grey-blue eyes and gingery brown hair that was greying at the temples. He was well built, with unusually muscular calves, a detail that would later prompt some investigators to speculate he had been a professional dancer or athlete. He was immaculately dressed. A white shirt, a tie, a double-breasted brown suit, polished shoes. His fingernails were clean and manicured. The pathologist who examined the body noted, with evident surprise, that the man's toenails were also clean and attended to, an observation worth making because, in his experience, most of the men who found their way to the Adelaide morgue did not meet that standard. His pockets held a modest and ordinary inventory, a partially used second-class rail ticket from Adelaide to Henley Beach, an unused bus ticket, a packet of juicy fruit chewing gum, an American-made aluminum comb, and a packet of Army Club cigarettes that contained, oddly, 7 cigarettes of a different brand, Kensitas. But there was nothing else. No wallet, no cash, no identification of any kind. And when detectives examined the man's clothing more carefully, they discovered something that would become one of the defining peculiarities of the case. Every manufacturer's label had been meticulously cut from every garment he was wearing. His shirt, his trousers, his jacket, his tie. Someone had taken a blade to the stitching and removed every trace of origin, every tag that might indicate where or when the clothes had been purchased. The man lying on Somerton Beach had been deliberately stripped of identity. The autopsy, conducted by pathologist Dr. John Dwyer, produced results that were troubling in their inconclusiveness. The man's organs were congested with blood. His spleen was enlarged to roughly 3 times its normal size. There was no evidence of external trauma. No wounds, no bruising, no signs of a struggle. No disease that could account for the death was identified, but the pathologist found the pattern of organ failure consistent with poisoning. The problem was that no known poison was detected in any toxicological test available at the time. Dr. Dwyer told the coroner that he was quite convinced the death could not have been natural, and that poison of a type not easily detected had likely been administered. Coroner Thomas Erskine Cleland recorded the cause of death as acute heart failure, the mechanism unknown. The death certificate was a document that admitted defeat. The man was embalmed and buried on the 14th of June 1949 at Adelaide's West Terrace Cemetery, in a plot specifically chosen on dry, elevated ground and sealed under concrete, in case it ever became necessary to exhume him. Salvation Army. Captain M. Webb led a brief service attended only by reporters and police. No mourners came. Nobody claimed the body. In the years that followed, flowers appeared on the grave at irregular intervals. Nobody could determine who was leaving them. It was during the embalming process that investigators made a discovery that had somehow escaped earlier examination. Tucked deep inside a small fob pocket in the lining of the man's trousers, the kind of pocket designed to hold a watch, was a tightly rolled scrap of paper. When it was carefully unrolled, 2 words were revealed, typeset in an ornate printed script: Tamam Shud. The phrase is Persian. It means it is ended or it is finished. Frank Kennedy, a police reporter for the Adelaide Advertiser, recognized the words immediately. They are the final two words printed on the last page of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a 12th century collection of Persian poetry translated into English by Edward Fitzgerald and popular in Australia during the war years. Its central theme is that one should live fully and accept death without regret. Police launched a public appeal asking anyone who possessed a copy of the Rubaiyat with a page torn from the back to come forward. Months passed before a man, who has never been publicly identified beyond the name Ronald Francis, reported that he had found a copy of the book in the back seat of his unlocked car, which had been parked near Somerton Beach around the time of the man's death. The final page of this edition, a rare printing produced in New Zealand in 1941, was missing, and forensic comparison confirmed that the scrap found in the dead man's pocket had been torn from this specific copy. But the book contained more than a missing page. On the inside of the back cover, visible only under ultraviolet examination, investigators detected faint pencil indentations, the impressions left by someone who had pressed hard while writing on a page that was no longer present. The markings revealed two things. The first was a local telephone number that would prove to be unlisted. The second was a sequence of capital letters arranged in 5 lines, with the second line struck through that appeared to be a cipher or coded message. The letters read, Mergo Ababd Miliaoi crossed out, W Bimpanet P Milia Buaya Kusi, Itum Tsamstgab. Military cryptographers from Australia's Department of Defence analysed the sequence. They failed to derive any meaning. The code was forwarded to experts at Scotland Yard and, according to some accounts, to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. None of them could break it. In the decades since, university research teams, amateur code breakers, and computational linguists have applied every analytical method available. The code has never been deciphered. Some experts have speculated that it may be a one-time pad cipher, a form of encryption used extensively by Soviet intelligence services during the Cold War and considered mathematically unbreakable without the specific key used to generate it. If that is what it was, it would mean the dead man on Somerton Beach was carrying the tools of espionage. The unlisted telephone number led police to a woman they would spend the next 7 decades trying to understand. She was a young nurse living in a house on Mosley Street in Glenelg, less than a mile from where the body was found. For years, she was known only by the pseudonyms Justine or Teresa Johnson, but she has since been identified publicly as Jessica Ellen Thompson, née Harkness, sometimes called Jo. When investigators showed her a plaster bust that had been cast from the dead man's head and upper torso, her reaction was dramatic and immediate. According to the detective present, she appeared completely taken aback, to the point of giving the appearance that she was about to faint. She then denied knowing the man. She denied any knowledge of why her telephone number would appear in a book found near his body. She denied any connection to his death. But she admitted one thing. She had once owned a copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. During the war, she said, she had given it to an Australian army officer she had known, a man named Alfred Boxall. Police believed they had solved the case. Boxall must be the dead man. They traced him to Maroubra in New South Wales, but when they arrived, Boxall was alive, healthy, and working in the maintenance section of a bus depot. His copy of the Rubaiyat, the one Thompson had given him, inscribed with her signature Jestin and a handwritten verse, was intact. The final page had not been torn. The words Tamam Shud were still in place. The dead man was not Alfred Boxall. The dead man had a different copy of the same rare book. And the question of who he was to Jessica Thompson, and she to him, remained unanswered. Former South Australian police detective Jerry Feltus, who investigated the case as a cold file, stated publicly that based on his interviews with Thompson, who was still alive in the early 2000s, he was fully convinced she knew the identity of the Somerton man and had chosen to conceal it. Her own daughter, Kate Thompson, told Australia's 60 Minutes programme in 2014 that her mother had once admitted knowing exactly who the dead man was, but said she could never reveal his identity, describing it as a matter for powers much higher than local police. Kate also stated that she believed her mother had been a Soviet spy, noting that Thompson had once claimed to speak Russian and refused to explain how she had learned the language. Jessica Thompson died in 2007. Whatever she knew died with her. But it was not only Jessica Thompson whose behavior raised suspicion. 3 years before the Somerton man appeared on the beach in 1945, a man named George Marshall had been found dead in Sydney, also apparently the victim of poisoning by an undetectable substance. When his body was examined, he was found to be clutching a copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. Marshall died within a mile of where Jessica Thompson had been living at the time. The parallels between the two deaths have never been satisfactorily addressed. The same book, the same manner of death, the same woman living nearby. If either death was connected to espionage, and Australia in 1948 was saturated with intelligence activity, hosting the top-secret British nuclear and rocket testing facility at Woomera, barely 300 miles north of Adelaide, and deeply embedded in the Five Eyes surveillance network, shared with Britain, the United States, Canada, and New Zealand. Then the recurring presence of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam begins to look less like coincidence and more like methodology. One-time pad ciphers require both sender and receiver to possess identical copies of the same text. If the Rubaiyat was being used as a cipher book by an intelligence network operating in Australia, then the Somerton man's torn page, the coded message on the back cover, and the telephone number of a woman who may have been running agents all fit a pattern that no official investigation has ever been willing to publicly confirm. What the official investigation was willing to do, however, was remarkably little. South Australian police never elevated the case beyond a missing persons inquiry. Despite the pathologist's belief that the man had been poisoned, despite the unbreakable cipher, despite the systematic removal of identifying labels from his clothing, despite the connection to a woman who appeared to nearly collapse upon seeing his face, no murder investigation was ever opened. When cryptographers from the Department of Defense were asked to analyze the code in 1978, they reported that it was impossible to provide a satisfactory answer, and the matter was dropped. Jessica Thompson's request in 1949 that her identity not be released to any third party was honored by police for decades, a decision that effectively shielded the most promising lead in the case from outside scrutiny. The plaster cast of the dead man's face survived, but the original Rubaiyat, the physical book from which the scrap was torn, the book containing the cipher, the book bearing the telephone number visible only under ultraviolet light, has been lost. It is no longer in police evidence. No record exists of when or how it was disposed of. The single most important piece of physical evidence in one of Australia's most enduring mysteries was allowed to simply disappear. In 2009, Robin Thompson, Jessica's son, the boy who had been 16 months old at the time of the Somerton man's death, died at the age of 63. Investigators had long noted that Robin shared two extraordinarily rare genetic traits with the dead man: an unusual ear shape found in only 1 to 2% of the Caucasian population, and a rare dental anomaly involving congenitally absent lateral incisors, present in roughly 2% of humans. The statistical probability that both traits would appear together by coincidence has been calculated at somewhere between 1 in 10 million and 1 in 20 million. Many researchers believed Robin Thompson was the Somerton man's biological son, but Robin was dead, and with him went the most accessible route to genetic confirmation. Professor Derek Abbott of the University of Adelaide had been pursuing the case since 2007 with a tenacity that bordered on obsession. In 2011, he petitioned the South Australian Attorney General John Rao for permission to exhume the Somerton man's body for DNA analysis. The request was denied. It would take another decade of advocacy before the exhumation was finally approved and carried out in May 2021. Using DNA extracted from hairs embedded in the plaster death mask, Abbott and renowned American genealogist Colleen Fitzpatrick announced in July 2022 that they had identified the Somerton man as Carl Charles Webb, an electrical engineer and instrument maker born in Melbourne in 1905. The identification, if accurate, answered the question that had haunted the case for 74 years. But it answered almost nothing else. Why had Carl Webb travelled to Adelaide? Why had every label been cut from his clothing? How had he obtained a rare New Zealand edition of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam? What was the cipher on the back cover? Who wrote the telephone number of a woman who appeared to recognize his face? What killed him? And why, for more than 7 decades, did Jessica Thompson refuse to say his name? As of this writing, South Australian police have neither confirmed nor denied the identification. The official position remains that the case is open. The cipher remains unbroken. The book remains lost. The cause of death remains unknown. And in Adelaide's West Terrace Cemetery, beneath a slab of concrete laid down with the explicit anticipation that one day someone might need to look again, lies a man who carried the last 2 words of a Persian poem in his pocket. It is finished, but nothing about this story is